We're back in the workshop and we're now at the stage that we're starting to look at some of the EV conversion stuff. So first thing is to decide where we're going to mount the divorced transfer box. So we've got the LT230 and we are trying to get it into a position so that it doesn't foul the seat box, and ideally in a position whereby the rear prop and the front prop would be the same length, but from how it sits now, we already know that's not going to be the case. The next best thing would be for them to be a length that is available off the shelf.
So we're going to carry on with this now, get it in a position where we're happy, and yeah, hopefully get good prop shaft lengths. Before we do, make sure you hit that subscribe button that's down there somewhere, and the little bell so you get notifications of our next videos. While you're doing this, we're going to pull this seat box out of the way and look at getting some technician out. Alright, so we've got the transfer box in a rough position that we mocked up a second ago, and we're quite happy with actually where it's sat at the minute. A few of the factors that we've got to take into consideration, as well as the seat box and prop shaft length, is particularly on the rear, with this being an 86-inch wheelbase, is the rear prop shaft angle. Now this transfer box is an LT230, which is from a Defender, so it's from a much later vehicle. And whilst they're a brilliant transfer box, in this sort of situation here where we've got quite a short chassis, we've just got to take into account the angles on that rear prop shaft. What I'm thinking at the minute is, position-wise, that's brilliant. We've got about a 750mm long front prop shaft at that, give or take. And at the minute roughly 500mm on the rear, which is very, very short. So to counteract that, and being so short, it means that the angle is going to be quite high. So if that's the chassis, and you've got your gearbox this end and your axle this end, obviously the transfer box is much higher up, so your prop shaft is running at an angle like this. And that means the UJs combined and you can have issues there. So what I think we might have to do is tilt the transfer box down at the rear a little, not a massive amount, only a few degrees, just to help improve it. I think it'll be fine anyway on this kind of vehicle, because it's not going to be a high articulation vehicle like the race car and stuff like that. So position wise though, I'm happy with that. We're just waiting for some laser cut stuff to come that will help us mount that, but just getting that mocked up in a position, you know, it's just on a transmission jack at the minute. Getting that there gives us a good idea of what to expect and what will work and what won't work. So next task will be getting that tacked in with some plate work, so we can look at manufacturing some mounts for it, and then looking at getting the motor in for the EV motor in the front there.
We'll have a whole other video as well where we will be stripping out and reconditioning the transfer box as well. Yeah. So that's another one to watch out for later.
Right, so after a bit of deliberation and discussion, we've actually changed our mind on the position of the transfer box. So what we've done is we've moved it forward and we've lowered it. Now we had in here a cross member. It wasn't the original cross member, it was one that was put in there for the straight six petrol engine that was in here, and they obviously moved around with the gearbox position. So I never really liked it anyway. So we've cut that out and basically moved the transfer box forward, giving us almost equal length props front and rear, give or take 20 mil. And we've lowered the transfer box as well, and as you can see, it's sitting almost flat position now. In a Defender, this end would be about this high up, another 3 or 4 inches higher than it is now. But we're going to run it in a flat position, purely because there isn't that much room around here, and with the seat box and the actual floor piece of the Series 1 being the shape that it is, it doesn't quite fit right. So we've sort of accommodated the position of this to so that it doesn't affect the floor position, the floor shape and everything. And incidentally, we've got better prop lengths and prop angles as well. I'm not so concerned about the rear prop angle now, because it's about 630 mil and it's a lot straighter. So I'm quite happy with that. So next job is getting it fixed in position, so that we can look at mounting it. So transfer box mounts are all done, and yes, I did say so, which I do every time. They're done, transfer box mounts. We chucked in the stay at the front as well, so it's mounted either side, and then it's got a stay, so when everything's bolted up, which you won't get that movement, because obviously it's on its own now, it's not with a gearbox and an engine that would keep everything in place. All rubber mounted as well, so you won't get so many vibrations through into the chassis. Not that it matters on a car like this anyway. Yeah, that's done. So now they're quite crude in it, but I've marked up where I need to cut them, make them nice, so we can take it out, finish making them look nice, oil them up, and they're all done then. Onto the motor, get that finished off and mounted, and we're set. Alright, so I'm taking a look at the mount for the motor. Now, there's a good amount of places to bolt to the motor, which gives me lots of options, and I'm planning on using the existing Land Rover chassis mounts. And everything lands in a really nice place. So if you come and have a look, I will show you what the plan is. It's not set in concrete, but you never know, might work out. So I've got these bolt holes here to work with. There's some bolt holes on the side as well that I think were mounted originally, but what I've done is I've pulled out these 4 bolts here, which are uniform by the looks of it. And obviously here is where I'm mounting to on the chassis, using standard rubber Land Rover gearbox mounts or engine mounts. So what I'm thinking is I'm going to make some standoff spacers that will go in there basically, and allow me to bolt a flat plate in here, which then I can take a return off in that direction to land on these mounts. So so basically I'll have one piece there like that mounts both mounts to the middle of the middle of the motor, and then I'll tidy it up, fill it out, and make it look neat and tidy. But that's the plan, and I'm thinking that'll work. All right, so we're back in, and for making some engine mounts or motor mounts, a real motor. So, like I said before earlier, I'm going to pick up off those 4 bolts at the front, so I needed something to go off of there. So we've knocked this plate up here, generic sort of shaped plate, just a big rectangle basically, with the 4 holes in it, and the idea is that will bolt up there, somewhere like that, and then either corner here and down here lands near the engine mounts, the existing engine mounts. So I'll shape the plate to suit. So we'll end up cutting it up here and here, and then probably filleting it, making it look really nice, so that it lands on those existing engine mounts. And then we've got some square plates somewhere, kind of like that, but not actually that, but square all the same, that are going to drop onto these bobbins here, that this is going to hit onto.
These?
Those are them. So they'll drop straight onto there, like this. And then we've got some for this to land on. So, but before we do that, the bolt holes on here are actually recessed in, and there's a lot of features that are in front of it, so I can't bolt this straight up to the engine without making some standoff spacers. So that's the first job. Okay, spacers made. Quickly knock these up on the lathe, and what this does now, it means that I can put them in there, and then this plate will sit on those standoff spacers, and it won't interfere with any of the other features that are on the front of this casting, and it'll give me something that's good and strong to screw to or to bolt to. So that's the mount roughed out and fitted in, very quick weld up. Obviously it's not finished, got to grind it up, and I'll probably end up changing the shape of it. Found some white paint. Yeah, just tidying it up basically, so I might just reshape that bit there and perhaps change the shape of this and just make it look a bit nicer. Give it a proper weld up and everything, so it's bang on. But for the purpose of fitting it, that's there, and obviously when we take everything out to do it, to weld it up properly and paint it and everything, we can do it right. So I'm happy with that. That's the motor mounted at the front. We're just going to do a bit at the back. This is going to carry the majority of the weight of the motor, which isn't that vast, to be honest with you. It's probably only about 80 kilos at the very most. So lighter than a gearbox and transfer box, probably by quite a bit, to be honest with you. But I want to put one on the rear, so we've got a bit of a steady there. So that's the next task. Cool, so at the back now of the motor, and my plan is to put essentially a steady in there, so it's not going to carry a vast amount of weight, because the front mounts have got it so well. So my plan is, I've made this plate up here which I've bolted to the back of the motor, and as you can see, I've stood it off from the mating face because I know that our synchro gearbox's adapter for the divorced output's going to bolt on there, and then my plate's going to bolt over the top of the adapter. So I've stood it off, knowing there's going to be that extra distance. So the plan is I want to run basically a steady from this plate back to the cross member. I don't want it to be solid mounted, so I'm not going to weld a bar straight in there. I need some sort of bushing. So I had to look around the workshop and in the bin and stuff, and just to see what we've got, get some ideas and stuff like that. And I found this, which is pretty much a brand new radius rod off of a Canon. off of our race canal, except it's got a big bend in it from a whoopsie. But the bushes and the bar and everything's still brand new, so the plan is I'm going to cut that off and then use these tabs, weld these tabs to the cross member, bolt through the bush and through this tube, and then weld it to the plate, to the mount here, and that's going to give us that steady and that's going to give us that strength. So that's what next job. So hot. We've got the rear mount on now, or the rear stay really, bolted up, or welded up there and then bolted to the chassis. Some tabs I've made just down here. So that's ready to be fully welded. The tabs are ready to be fully welded. Obviously we've got to do the mount at the front. So that's ready to come out, and we can stick the divorce adapter on the back now and then bolt it in semi-permanently for testing and stuff. Alright, so I've got all the mounts ground up into a shape that looks good. So now I'm just going to weld them up and then give them a light grind up with the linishing disc on the grinder. Made myself up this makeshift bench on the end of the chassis, which is nice, and I've got my little stool to sit on, so I'm going to get welding now. Cool, well, that's all the bits welded up. I'm just giving them a quick grind up with the linishing disc so there's no sharp edges. I'm going to stick some black paint on them now. It's very straightforward kit. Obviously this gives you a flange on the output shaft of the M57 motor, and that will allow you to then mate it to something else. Gearbox, transfer box, whatever it is. So within the fitting kit, or the kit itself, sorry, you'll have the adapter plate, which is a bearing carrier, and you'll have the flange, which is all assembled as one item that comes as one unit. In addition to that, you'll have a bag of fasteners, which includes 6 bolts and 2 nuts, and then 2 dowels as well. Now, as I say, fitting is really straightforward. It is pretty much a case of just bolting it to the motor, but there's just a couple of things that you need to be aware of when you're doing that. One is greasing the shaft, so using the right grease, a high temp preferably, and then also inserting the dowels into the block. So, to begin, we'll start with the dowels. So these are 2 M10 by 20mm dowels that go at the 2 o'clock position, and then also the 7 o'clock position on the motor. So the dowels come with a tapered end and a round end, domed end. So we're going to put them in domed end into the motor, which will make it easier when we come to putting the plate on. It will help it line up. Super straightforward to do that. It's literally a case of lining them up and then tapping them in with a hammer, which we're going to pause here because I haven't got one. We're going to leave this in the series video, I think. Just do this for me. Because of how crap I am at videos. So fitting both dowels, as I say, just tapping them in. Trying to get them lined up so I'm not putting them in at an angle which then will damage the hole, but they should line themselves up pretty simple, and it's just a case of tapping them in. As you can hear, they've bottomed out, but they're still sticking out probably about 8 or 9 mil, which is more than enough to line up the adapter plate. From here, we're going to grease the shaft on the EM57 with some high temp grease. Now I'm using Swepco 165, which is a good high temp grease, ideal for this situation. So I'm just literally putting a bit of grease on the splines, not going too mad, but basically, as this is a dry coupling in the sense that there's no oil there to lubricate them, we do want some grease in there. If you're being really awesome when it comes to service time, you'd be whipping whatever coupling you've got on here, prop shaft or whatever it might be, and just firing a bit more grease in there, the same as when you do your UJs as well. So with a bit of grease in there, it's fairly obvious now, so we're going to slide the flange onto the splines, push them up, and then you can feel the plate start to locate on the dowels that we've put in, which is great. Now, you can tap them on with a soft hammer, which I haven't got with me at the minute, so I'm just going to put the bolts in, and then the plate will pull itself up to the engine block, or the motor block as it were. Really, really straightforward as well. I don't need to tell you how to put bolts in. You can Loctite these, would be a great idea. For the purpose of this video, I'm not going to do it. But you've got four of the bolts which have got threads in, and then 2 on this side here are the ones that we're going to put nuts on. Sorry, 3 on that side that take nuts. So that one, and that one are all going to take nuts. So then I've got my 8mm hex socket, and I'm going to pull these down as evenly as possible because I haven't tapped it up. What you don't want to do is just pull one straight down and pull the plate on at an angle, so we're going to try and do it as evenly as possible. So work on that side. And there we go, she pulled down just on the 2 bolts, which is great, so I'm going to tighten the rest of these up. There we go, so all bolted up now. Just going to check that moves freely. Obviously check that your motor moves freely anyway and that you haven't already got an issue somewhere else, but that moves nice and free, and I'm happy with that. So as I say, where possible, if you can grease the spline shaft with your usual interval servicing and stuff, that would be great, even to the point where you could just fire some liquid grease down there, but ideally a high temp grease like the Swepco 165 would be perfect. So that's the motor in, the transfer box in, and we can move on to the next job, which is finishing off this chassis. After that, we're going to take a look at getting the battery pack disassembled, and then the batteries mounted in the chassis in decent places. So thanks for watching. It's been a long one, I know,
but thanks for bearing with. We're going to keep trying improving on these videos and keep them coming as soon as we can get them filmed. So hit that subscribe button and the little bell, and you'll get a notification of when we are next back. So thank you.